chances are good that you have heard this one before. But did you know that this little rhythm caused a revolution? Hello and welcome to Keen on Keys. Today I'm going to talk about the Casio MT40 and 41. The MT40 was released at the end of 1981, and it's the successor of the MT30, which I've already shown you. I don't own an MT40, but I have an MT41. It's the exact same instrument. The only difference is the color and the numbering. Something you will encounter a lot of times if you're interested in home keyboards. And Casio took it almost to perfection with the latest SA models, which only have a different colored bottom side. I'm wondering why they produced the PT1 in so many different colors without changing the numbering. Anyway, the MT41 replaced the MT40 in early 1983. The original price was $150 or £99, and it's still sold for about the same price on the second-hand market. Both models are based on the MT30. It's made of thicker plastic and a bit heavier, but a lot of features are the same. 37 mid-sized keys, 8-note polyphony, and the same 22 presets. But there are two additional features which make the MT40 and 41 unique. First, the little bass keys on the left-hand side. You may have seen these mini keys on some other Casio keyboards, but these keys only play chords. And second, 6 accompaniment patterns which consist of drums and bass only. I know, that doesn't sound like much at first. A bit more impressive might be the fact that it was used by a lot of famous musicians, like the Magnetic Fields, Gorillaz or Flake, the keyboard player of Rammstein. He used it in his first band Feeling B as a bass. But this is also the case with a couple of other Casio keyboards. However, what happened to this very preset is unique for a home keyboard, because this pattern pushed Jamaican music into the digital era. The story about this is well documented, and there's no doubt about the key figures. It started with this pattern and the resulting song Under Me Slang Tang in 1985. Noel Davey, a young Jamaican musician from Kingston, was given an MT40 by a friend, who brought it to Jamaica from the States at the end of 1984. He only owned a melodica before, but people saw his talent and thought he would do much better with a keyboard. He fooled around with it, together with a 19-year-old singer named Wayne Smith, when all of a sudden this pattern popped up. He described it as a freak accident, and I can imagine why. It's not immediately obvious how the bass accompaniment is started. There's no accompaniment mode switch as usual. When you press start, only the rhythm plays. You can use the keys to play a bass line yourself, but you can't start the automatic bass after you have started the rhythm. You have to press the sync button first. Noel Davey said that he lost the pattern, but after a week or so he found it again. He created a rhythm track and Wayne Smith laid down some lyrics inspired by Barrington Levy's hit Under Me Sensi. They presented it to mixmaster and producer Lloyd King Jammy James, who had already produced an album for Wayne Smith. He made it a bit slower and added a couple of tracks on top. But they didn't know what they had until King Jammy played it on the legendary Soundclash in Kingston, February 1985. Under Me Slang Tang became a huge hit, not only in Jamaica, and it started a digital revolution in reggae. It marked the end of the roots reggae era and the beginning of dancehall, also known as ragamuffin or ragga, which was mainly produced with synthesizers and drum computers. It was common in reggae music that singers used popular rhythms, that means a beat and a bass line, for their own songs, and so hundreds of records with the same rhythm were released. And Slang Tang became one of the most famous reggae rhythms of all times. It even influenced other genres like hip-hop. And also Casio implemented the rock pattern as MT40 rhythm in their latest SA models. But there's at least one more person involved in this revolution. The one at Casio who programmed this pattern. Most of the rhythms in the early home keyboards contain very little characteristic details. The advantage of this is that they are very flexible. You can play a lot of chord progressions. But this is such a characteristic pattern that people started to wonder if it's inspired by an existing rock song. Most have associated it with Eddie Cochran's Something Else, which goes like this. Or Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols. And someone finally asked the programmer, Casio's product development and music engineer Hiroko Okuda. She denied that it was inspired by one of these tracks, but she said that it's based on a British rock song of the 70s, so it was quickly associated with David Bowie's Hang On To Yourself, a track from the 1972 album Spiders from Mars. And the intro of the song is quite close to it. But listen carefully. You hear one big difference, and I don't mean the bass notes. Now the pattern again. The beat plays half time, or the bass double time, depends on how you look at it. If you turn up the tempo to a reasonable rock song tempo, the bass is way too fast. That doesn't make much sense at higher speeds. Or, wait a bit. No. But if you slow it down to a reasonable tempo for the bass, the drums get that halftime feel, and you are almost forced to play offbeat chords. And like all of the 6 accompaniment patterns, it contains the third, to compensate for the missing chord instrument. Maybe it's not so weird anymore that a rock pattern has made a career in a completely different genre. I think a big credit for the digital reggae revolution goes to Hiroko Okuda. And she mentioned that she was listening to a lot of reggae music when she was at college. I doubt that something like this would have made it that far. So let's have a closer look at this iconic thing. We already know the sound chip for the main voice from the MT30. Here's the additional chip for the accompaniment. It triggers the analog drums and the bass line. These slider caps fall off easily. 3 of them are already lost, and chances are bad that I'll ever find some to replace the missing ones. I will use the headphone jack. The line-out doesn't mute the speaker and it's a bit quieter. As I said, most of the functions are identical to the ones on the MT30. 8-note polyphony, vibrato, sustain, the tone memory switch, and the same 22 presets. I'm not going to play them one at a time again, but you will hear some of them later on. The analog drums are quite punchy. I like the bass drum. The fill button plays a 16th note snare roll or a 8th note bass drum. And you can combine the two. And you can play a monophonic bass line with the small keys. It's a bit like having a VL1 lying next to it. The keys have nearly the same size. Let's see how we can easily achieve a talented bass performance. For the automatic bass line, push Sync. A single key selects a bass line that fits a major chord. Select an additional key to the right, it doesn't matter if black or white, for a minor chord. And 2 keys for a 7th chord. It's nice that the upper notes play the bass line an octave higher. This is not the case with many home keyboards. Next is pops. Of course, you can change the pattern while playing. Slow rock. Most of the bass patterns have a length of 2 measures. If you keep the key pressed, only the first bar is repeated. Swing. Samba. and finally waltz. It takes a little practice to change the chords with these tiny keys. And I wish some of the patterns didn't contain the third. That would make them a little more flexible. And you could play more different chord progressions over a looped pattern. But the accompaniment has a unique character, and I like it a lot. This keyboard is forever linked to the development of dancehall. If you look at it from the point of view of its impact on the musical style, you can certainly put this little Casio in a row with instruments like the Roland TB-303. Maybe dancehall music would sound different today if Noel Davies' friend had gotten him an MT-30 instead. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.